Welcome, Roster Wars, to the 2026 United Nations Rookie Summit. Just the two of us today. It's Ross and Corb tag teaming the defensive tackles and the defensive backs. Ross, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. We're missing out on Tyler, so it's not going to be as fun for all the listeners there. It's just going to be us boring guys talking football, I'm afraid.
Yep, Tyler's got to take care of that mouth, give it a little break. He's having some oral surgery, I think he said today. So, thoughts and prayers to Tyler. We miss you, buddy. We, however, must carry on. We are what? This is the second to last Sunday before the NFL draft. So we've got defensive tackles, defensive backs today, running backs for the grand finale. A couple days go by, and we are in the NFL draft. Exciting times.
Yeah, it's a bumper episode, isn't it? We're covering a couple of positions, but yeah, it's still five players I think we're doing. So we've got a lot to squeeze in, a lot to squeeze in.
Yeah, yeah, we wanted to lump these together because in terms of fantasy football for roster wars, the defensive tackles, the defensive backs, not they're not getting you the most points. You typically don't see them going very highly in drafts, but we've got two defensive tackles and three defensive backs we want to discuss. Kayden McDonald out of Ohio State and Caleb Banks out of Florida will be the defensive tackles. Then we have three safeties: Caleb Downs from Ohio State, Dillon Thieneman from Oregon, and Emmanuel McNeill-Warren out of Toledo. But before we get into those prospects, Ross, let's take a look back and have you fill in for Tyler today. We want to see how he did last year in our rankings and our sleepers.
Yeah, but it's funny looking back because I don't even remember doing these a year later. So it's cool to see how we ranked the guys at the time. So for defensive tackles, we looked at Mason Graham, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, and Kenneth Grant. I think they're all first round picks, if not
Mhm.
at least three of them. In terms of rankings, so I had Graham first, Harmon second, Nolan, and then Grant. And you, Corbin, you had Graham, Nolan, Harmon, and then Grant. So I think Graham was the standout this season. He finished 25th DT. The other guys way down there, 90, 104, 74, but that's after 1 year, and these guys take time to come to fruition. So I'm happy with Harmon. I think I really like him as a player. Nolan showed some stuff, got a couple of sacks, so I wouldn't say our rankings are too bad anyway.
No, no, not bad at all. Yeah, I think Nolan's hurt too. And Kenneth Grant, I think he
Yeah.
was the second defensive tackle taken off the board too. I think he went top 20, if I'm not mistaken, to the Dolphins.
Right. Yeah, Dolphins, yeah, yeah. And sleepers, we had some sleepers as well. So Corbin, you took Darius Alexander at Toledo. Third rounder, third round pick for the Giants. Notable contribution. He had two sacks against the Lions, so yeah, betrayed you there. But
Really?
my sleeper was Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. He was a fourth round pick to the Patriots. Didn't play that much, but contributed here and there. So again, these are sleepers. These are guys that are going to take time to develop, especially in the mid round picks. So maybe they become starters, maybe they become fantasy relevant at some point, but nothing after year one. But yeah, deeper ones, I would say.
Yeah, nothing to write home about. But again, those defensive tackles, I mean, not the biggest fantasy stars for us, anyways. But what about the defensive backs? Did we have any safeties that were producing at
So
all for us? We're looking better there.
in terms of sleepers, you had Latham Ransom, Ohio State, who's a fourth round pick to the Panthers. I actually thought when he got in the field, he looked okay, but he didn't play as much. A bit down the depth chart, third in the depth chart. I had Jade Barron, so I took a first round pick. Um, he went to the Broncos and he didn't play either. So even taking the first round picks doesn't seem to work. But he was a cornerback. I liked him as a sort of nickel guy. Um, but hopefully this year he'll get a bit more time to play and look good. But yeah, I thought honestly I like the players that we picked there for the sleepers. Um, but yeah, again, I would just take time. I will take time. But in terms
Yeah.
of rankings for DB, so last year we done Travis Hunter as a DB, but obviously he didn't get a designation as a cornerback last year for fantasy. He was just a wide receiver. Maybe that will change this year because he is moving to cornerback.
Mhm.
But we both had him ranked number one. We also did Nick Emmanuel-Warren. We both had ranked number two, and he turned out to be the guy. Safety number two in points per game. Just an outstanding season, really big contributor for your fantasy team as a rookie. We also did Xavier Watts and Malachi Starks, and I had Watts third and Starks fourth, and you had them flipped. So I think Watts had a slightly better season, couple of big plays, couple of interceptions. But again, yeah, we're not going to judge us too harshly on that. I think we both got Emmanuel pretty well spot on, and maybe Hunter would have been the guy if he got that cornerback designation. We'll never know.
Yeah, Emmanuel is looking to be a very nice fantasy asset. I tried to poach him. I probably should have done a multi-year deal. Can't remember what I did, but yeah, that would be a nice piece to have on your fantasy team. Maybe in a few years he'll trickle down in RR and we'll be able to nab him in RFA. We shall see. But enough about last year. Let's focus on the here and now. Let's talk about the new guys coming in. You're going to want to keep track of this for your drafts. You can find some nice late round value here. So we'll kick it off with Kayden McDonald out of Ohio State. He's 21 years old, a junior coming out of college. Started off as a bit more of a rotational piece his first few years. Really didn't do much in terms of statistics until this last year, his junior year, where he had an All-American season. One of the I think he was finalist for the Outlander Trophy too, the best defensive lineman. And he played for the number one defense in college football this last year. He's 6'2", 326 pounds. He did not have a RAS score. He only did 27 on the bench. Wow. That was the only testing he did. I mean, 27 on the bench is a crazy number, but no other athletic testing. Last year, through 14 games, he had 65 tackles. 31 of those were solo with 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles. And in 2024, more limited. Like I said, he didn't really step into that starting role until last year. Through 16 games, he had 19 tackles, 7 of those solo, 1.5 tackles for loss, no sacks, and 1 pass breakup. So this is a guy who's more of a nose tackle. He is going to eat up space in the gaps, eat up blockers, and he's going to free up linebacker safeties, some other defensive lineman on a stunt or, linebacker safety on a blitz to go and clean up in the backfield. But will that translate to fantasy production? That's what I'm not sure of.
Yeah, I think we see the same player. He's a two gap and sort of run defending tackle, and he's quite limited as a pass rusher. Probably one of those guys who's going to be a better NFL player than fantasy player. But um, as a run defender, he really showed like great strength and control at the point of attack to hold his defender, and he had some really great plays where he would sort of peek his head out in one gap and then discard the lineman and make the tackle in the other gap. And that's really, really high level stuff. He's really strong against double teams as well. Usually you just want him to sort of hold off the defenders and let other guys clean up. But he was actually able to make the tackle and make the play at times because he's strength in his lower body. And I think obviously he wasn't really a good pass rusher. I think it's difficult to develop that at this stage at the NFL, unless you're like an uber athlete and you're showing some flashes. Definitely didn't see that from him. And obviously, no, we didn't have the testing, but I wouldn't bet on him being like a 999 RAS guy. Um, and I feel like it's something you really have or don't have as a pass rusher at this stage. And that definitely limits his upside. I also think it'll limit him in the draft itself as well. So on talent, like as a two down guy, he's going to contribute a lot to an NFL team. But can you take that in like the top 15, top 20? Or is he going to be a guy that slides to the very back of the first, probably even the second round, just because he's not going to be on the field as much? Um, and yeah, as a fantasy asset as well, like you're looking at defensive tackles and you really want like 3 or 4 sacks a year as a minimum to like be up there in the top like 20 or something like that, or like 100 tackles. Like Derek Brown had like an insane year where he had like 100 tackles or something like that. But yeah, I don't really see that for Kayden McDonald. So he's a bit of a weird one in terms of fantasy. Like probably a good player, probably going to be fringe first round pick, but I don't think he's that draftable in roster wars, but could be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing with nose tackles, I mean, a lot of people say they're a dime a dozen. They're a big body who just eats up space. They anchor in their gap and they let other players come in and clean up and actually pad those stats. So for us, that doesn't really give us a lot of value in terms of somebody that you want to put on your fantasy team. I mean, I like the player, but like you said, I think he's just more of a good NFL player. I think that he's elite against the run. You know, as soon as you're not moving him off the spot. He's got powerful hands. He can deliver a punch and kind of stun those offensive linemen. And the other thing to consider too is with Ohio State having their defense as good as it was, they have to focus their attention elsewhere. When you're at the NFL, like everybody is on your level. So I think the step up in competition isn't going to make his job any easier. And really, he has no pass rush to speak of. It's just all bull rush. And another thing about him is when it is a passing down or a passing play, you don't see that effort. He's just like, well, I'm not getting to the quarterback. I'm just going to stand here. That's really all he does. So I mean, I do like the player a lot, but in terms of fantasy value, I just don't see it. I think he's kind of a fringe first round, probably second round pick at this point, but he's solid. I just don't see the upside when there's some other players similar to him that offer a little bit more upside in the pass rush department.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's better NFL player than fantasy player definitely for us. He fits a certain hole, he fits a certain gap. And to be honest, some teams might have them higher on their board than others because they need that player and that and he fit their system. But maybe others like no, they just need like a pass rusher or they need interior pressure, and he's not going to give that.
Mhm. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next guy here. We've got Caleb Banks coming out of Florida, Michigan native, fun fact. He's 24 years old, a senior coming out of college. Played his first 2 years at Louisville before he transferred to Florida. He played 3 years there. Another guy who's a Senior Bowl standout. You know, I like my Senior Bowl standouts. He is 6'6", 327 pounds, so very tall for a defensive lineman, or defensive tackle, I should say. You got Kayden McDonald, 6'2". He's more of that bowling ball type, which I like in my nose. But his RAS score was a 9.83, so about as good as it gets. He ran a 5.04 40-yard dash with good splits, elite explosive scores, no agility testing. Last year, he only played in 3 games due to a foot injury, so 6 tackles, 1 TFL, no big deal. But in 2024, in 12 games, he had 21 tackles. 10 of those were solo with 7 TFLs, 4.5 sacks, a pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles. This is a guy that can generate pass rush. You know, he's shown that he has the savvy, the know-how, the skill set to be a productive pass rusher from the interior. I think with Caleb Banks, it's really just more about, you know, his athleticism, his size, his traits. There's not a lot of statistics, but I think there's a lot of projections, you know, putting him in the day two category. I think that trait wise, he brings a little bit more to the table than Kayden McDonald does in terms of somebody that you would want on your fantasy football team.
Yeah, it's funny. I think he's a complete polar opposite player from Kayden McDonald. Like everything he does well, McDonald doesn't do too well. And you talk about the athleticism and the combine scores. Apparently, he broke his foot at the Senior Bowl, and so those incredible combine numbers was with a broken foot, which is absolutely insane. And he talked about how big he is, but his first step explosiveness is also there. It's completely off the charts. And you just watch him, and I fell in love with him, to be honest. Like he combines that sort of quickness with the powerful hands, and he's just an instant pass into the backfield. You just can't stop him at times when he gets going. You can sometimes push him away from the play, but that's your best bet. I think he was used a lot as like a sort of gap shooting player who was there to cause disruption rather than like make the tackle. So he wasn't maybe getting as much production in terms of tackles. But like you said, the pass rushing upside is there, and he's got a very, very high ceiling. You can't really teach what he's got. And obviously, I talked about he broke his foot. He had foot issues during the season. He's only really got 1 year of production because of these injuries. And he's a big man with foot injuries, and that tends to be a sort of lingering thing. So in terms of the NFL, that's obviously going to knock him down a bit. And you may get a value in the second round of a guy with such an incredible ceiling in the second round, which is unheard of. But in terms of fantasy, I'm not knocking him for his injury history, because maybe if he was a first round pick, like in the fantasy draft, you'd think about the injuries and take other players over him. But he's a defensive tackle. He's going in the fifth, sixth, seventh round. That is very, very low risk. I'm happy to take the risk on him because of the ceiling, because of the pass rush ability. And that's the kind of guy who can become like a top 10 defensive tackle. And obviously on a week to week basis as well, he can easily blow it for 2, 3 sacks a game and get you the very, very high scores to win your game week.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering why you were pushing to have Caleb Banks included in this conversation, but
I
after
just
you
like
watch
him,
the
yeah.
tape, yeah, I mean the pass rush thing is what really jumps out to me because you don't see people of his size, 6'6", almost 330 pounds, who can rush the passer like that. And like you said, he is about the opposite of Kayden McDonald, and I see your point. I still think that he can anchor against the run. He's got those powerful hands, so that's similar. But at 6'6", you also see him playing with a little bit higher pad level, which will get him
Mm.
washed down and kind of taken out of the play. That's a bit of a concern. So I would put him just, a notch below Kayden McDonald in terms of defending the run. But it's the pass rush. That's why you want the guy. And if you're taking him fifth, sixth, seventh round, you're going to stash him on your taxi squad anyways and just see what he does on a week to week basis. He gets poached. You can just match that and slide him in there and see what happens. I actually read that the foot injury came the night before he was supposed to run at the combine, and he still did it.
Right.
So even more impressive. And he had surgery to repair that. They're projecting that he'll be back sometime in June. I still think that he has some work to do when it comes to, being a savvy pass rusher. He's got a couple of counters, some good moves in there, but he needs to refine his game a little bit. Nothing crazy at all. Um, yeah, I really like the player. I like that pass rush upside. You just don't get that with Kayden McDonald. Yeah, and
Fair
overall, I
enough.
wouldn't say this is a very strong defensive tackle class. But when you have this and you need a defensive tackle, like NFL teams are going to prioritize guys with traits, hoping that they can coach him up. And his issues are very coachable. High pad level, teach him a little bit more and pass rush, and I think that'll be a solid player and a potentially 3 down guy for whatever NFL team drafts him.
Yeah, these arrogant coaches who think they know everything. It's like, I can
Yeah.
fix him. I can teach him everything. You can't teach the size, the explosiveness, but I can teach him how to be a pass rusher. So yeah, I think, yeah, if he didn't have the injuries, he'd be a first round pick for me just with the traits. But like you said, it's not really a great class in general. So we might not even see a defensive tackle go in the first round, but um, he's definitely a guy that I'm interested in for fantasy.
And one thing I didn't mention is his versatility. He played anywhere from nose all the way to wide nine at Florida too, so you can line him up anywhere. So I think that's gonna get him a lot of playing time. Just a chess piece that you can move around on the defensive line. That's one thing to note. But let's keep it moving here. We got 2 D tackles down. That's going to be it for the day in that position group. But let's talk about these 3 safeties. We opted to talk about safeties just because you typically see them offering a little bit more upside than corners, which, they really are a dime a dozen. It doesn't matter who you have. Maybe you get a guy who averages a point more per week or something like that. But safeties, you can find some good value. And we've got some top end talent in this class. 3 guys that could potentially be round 1 picks. And we're going to talk about all of them right now. So let's start off with Caleb Downs, everybody's favorite. Some people say he is the best prospect in the entire class, regardless of position. He's from Ohio State, 21 years old, junior coming out of college. You guys are going to think I'm kissing his ass, and I am because, I mean, everything about him is off the charts. His dad is Gary Downs. He was a running back. His uncle was Dre Bly, cornerback. His brother's Josh Downs, wide receiver. He's the #1 safety recruit coming out of high school, 5 stars. As a true freshman at Alabama, he had 107 tackles. That's the first freshman in the history of Alabama to ever lead the team in tackles. After Saban retired, he transferred to Ohio State, kept producing. I mean, he really is an elite prospect. He's 6 foot flat. I think he's 206 pounds. I had 2 numbers in here. 206 pounds, no combine testing, so he didn't get a RAS score. And honestly, when you got a guy who's almost a no-doubter top 10, it's fair not to test. You're not really going to do anything to your draft stock by doing so. You would only hurt it. Last year, in 14 games, he had 68 tackles. 45 of those were solo with 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. 2024, 16 games, 82 tackles, 49 of those were solo with 7.5 TFLs, a sack, 2 picks, 6 passes defended. I mean, I tried to come up with some negatives about this guy, but he really just checks every single box. You know, he's got the versatility to play deep in box, nickel. He can do it all.
Yeah, I'm not really gonna to stop you there or I'm going to continue the love in, to be honest. Like, yeah, he's an incredible player. And like you said, best player in college football, like since he was a freshman, which is just crazy to say. Crazy to say about a safety, crazy to say about a freshman. Um, but to touch on more, like he's a great communicator and a great looks like a great leader. 1 year with and Saban and 2 years at Ohio State, with last year being with Patricia, which is like an NFL style or an NFL level defense, with all the sort of verbiage and communication that an NFL defense needs. And so yeah, you see it, and you see that he's an intelligent player on the tape as well. Like his positioning is just so good. He's always around the ball. Even if he's coming from deep, he just suddenly teleports onto your screen and he's around the ball. He's aggressive, but not in like a reckless way. I think he's aggressive because he reads the game so well. He's got such good instincts and he gets to the right spot because of that football intelligence. He's don't think he's a hard hitter with like elite stopping power, but he's a secure enough tackler. And really good zone defender, eyes always on the QB as well, and he can get into the right spot again to make a play. It's just always about being in the right spot. To come up with some negatives, um, probably not the most physically impressive, um, but again, he really makes up for it with his football IQ. I was thinking a lot, and I was thinking there's a famous soccer saying, which are the first 2 yards are in your head. So he doesn't need to be this physical athletic freak, which I don't think he is. And I think that's especially true at safety as well. Like if you can read the game well enough, then you're definitely going to do really well. Like you think about some of the best safeties we've had. Kyle Hamilton right now, did he run like a 4.6 or something like that? Obviously, Downs quite isn't quite as big as that, but just in terms of speed and
Mhm.
athleticism in general, I think he's more than good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And at safety, I mean, I want a guy that has those instincts, and he absolutely has it. The processing speed is clearly there, whether it's run or pass. As soon as he diagnoses, he's reacting, and it's very, very quick to trigger. He talked about the versatility. You mentioned his ability as a tackler. You know, he doesn't have like those hard hitting highlights. He has a few, but he has very sound technique. You know, he's breaking down, he's wrapping up and making sure he gets them to the ground. A lot of guys will just lunge at legs, try and grab something and hope they go down. He doesn't do that. His communication skills, you mentioned, I think that's something you can't overlook. He's pretty much the green dot of the secondary. He's communicating with all the defensive backs where they need to be, linebackers as well. Sees the field super well. I mean, he's a ball hawk. He manipulates quarterbacks. He anticipates routes and drives to the ball. Like he just has a nose for the ball. And against the run, I mentioned he's quick to diagnose. He can also kind of set an edge and fill those gaps. And we didn't even mention he also returns punts for Alabama and Ohio State. So you have that kind of piece to it as well. Yeah, in terms of negatives, like the only thing that I had saw was he'll go for the highlight play, whether it's a big hit or, maybe an interception when he'll maybe go to pick the ball up, but it's better to just bat the ball down. Um, he can struggle against offensive linemen, but he's a safety. That's not his game. He's not really supposed to be doing that. And if you're wasting an offensive lineman on a safety, then someone else is there to take on the tackle. Yeah, I mean he's a fantastic prospect. I just wonder where he's going to go in the NFL. I guess Ross, would you prefer him more playing deep or more in box? I would say in box, but I think he'd be best utilized with more depth.
I would say, and I think you want him around the ball. So yeah, I would say around the box more. I think modern safeties do a bit of everything, to be honest. But yeah, I
Mhm.
would definitely have him wanting him near the line of scrimmage, like near being able to communicate with his linebackers and go ahead and make the plays. So yeah, definitely around maybe a more of a strong safety type.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal for fantasy football, but I just think if they have him more of one of the two deep safeties, or if he's just, playing center field out there, that could kind of take him out and make him less fantasy relevant. Still, I think that this is a guy that'll probably be sneaking into those mid rounds in our roster worst draft. So keep an eye on that. I don't know where he's going to go exactly, but I can tell you it's not very deep. And I think at least in round four, I'm going to be seriously consider taking him there.
Yeah, I've not really thought about it to be honest in terms of that because I think once you start projecting into the fourth and fifth round, you don't know. I just vibes based drafting, and when I get to that stage, I look at the players, and
Yeah.
that's when you're on the clock, you're thinking, am I really going to pick this like fourth round wide receiver over like a top 10 pick? You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
that's when it really comes down to it. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of safeties in general because I think you can sort of find ones off the waiver wire. But this class in general, I think, is a really, really good time. If you're going to buy
Yep.
in on any class, it's probably this one.
Yep. There's exceptions. And I mean, a guy who's talked about being a top 10 pick and number one overall in the class, I mean, you definitely got to consider him taking him a little earlier than later. He's not going to be there fifth, sixth, seventh round, I don't think.
No, no.
But we've got another guy who's been a bit of a riser. A lot of people pegged him as a day two kind of guy after the combine. Not the case anymore. He might not even make it out of the top 20 of the first round. And that's Dillon Thieneman out of Oregon. He's 21 years old, junior coming out. He played his first 2 years at Purdue before he transferred to Oregon. Finished, this last season there. He just 1 year at Oregon. He's 6 foot tall, 201 pounds with a RAS score of a 982. That is elite, elite, elite. A 4.35 40-yard dash, great splits, elite explosive scores, no agility. Last year, he had in 15 games at Oregon 96 tackles, 44 of those being solo with 3.5 TFLs, sack, and 5 pass breakups. And then in 2024 at Purdue, in 12 games, he had 104 tackles, 70 of those being solo with 4.5 TFLs, a sack, and a pass breakup. This is a guy that, you could say like he has some of the best coverage grades of any safety in this class. I mean, he really, really is great. He's got that elite speed with a 4.35 40. You can line him up at free safety, strong safety, nickel, depth, in box, so he is that versatile kind of chess piece. Just a very, very solid player. There's a few things I think that he needs to clean up, but I see why he is in this first round discussion for sure.
Yeah, and he's another guy like Downs who started as a freshman and just been great like every single year. I think he had around 100 tackles like all 3 years, and dominant at Purdue, and then made the step up to Oregon, and then just continued to be dominant. And I love seeing that in the college players now, all the transfer and like if you can make the step up and still be really, really good, it bodes well for making the step up to the NFL as well. So yeah, the production profile really good. And then he's got the athleticism as well. Like he's a rangy player, so great athlete. He's got speed. He's got balance as well, and he's got like fluid hips. I don't think he's a straight line athlete, despite not having agility drills. I think on tape he shows the ability to sort of stop and react to the running back or whatever. He lined up as a deep safety a lot for Purdue and Oregon. He did a bit of everything, did line up deep as well. And as like a single high safety, he's got that sort of speed and awareness, I suppose, to reach the sideline and then make the play on the ball. And also you can see him sort of coming from that deep side of the field and driving on the ball carrier and making like a tackle from like 15 yards because he's got that again, he's rangy, he's got that speed to close the gap really, really quickly. Closer to the line of scrimmage, like his athleticism makes him a really good blitzer. And I think that's what makes him fit the sort of modern safety profile of being able to move around and do whatever a defense needs. Um, and yeah, I really like him again. Like, it's not much downside to talk about in terms of him. Um, so yeah, did you have negatives? Do you have any negatives on Thieneman?
Yeah, I mean, I like the player, so don't get me wrong, but when I compare him to Caleb Downs, I see that he is a little bit more over aggressive. I knock Downs a little bit for that, but you see that a lot more on Tienemann's tape. He bites on play action. He might take a bad angle in pursuit of a ball carrier. When it comes to his tackling, like it's actually pretty sound when he has a good angle. He's wrapping up. He's not diving at ankles, anything like that. My other concern would be how teams use him because I do think with Caleb Downs, you have that versatility to use him however you want in the NFL. But with Thieneman, I think he's probably best as that single high free safety kind of guy. So I think that his tackle numbers are going to take a dip there. Could he, be that ball hawking guy that, he can make up for it with some interceptions, some pass breakups, maybe. But I think that, when I'm looking at him and comparing him to Caleb Downs, I like Downs' upside a little bit more in the run game. I don't think Thieneman will be in the mix that much there. One of the most common projections I see for him is to the Vikings, kind of taking on that Harrison Smith role. So having a year under Harrison Smith would be incredible, and then he would be able to just take the reins and run with it from there. I think they expect they're getting their next great white safety who's going to be there for 10, 15 years. And I mean, based on the athleticism, the production, the traits, I mean, he's got the potential to do that absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't Caleb Downs, I mean, he would be the number one safety in a lot of other draft classes. So great player. I like him a lot. Just a couple of things to nitpick at.
It's funny to talk about him. He's been white. He's got him and the linebackers from Oregon. They've got the Caucasian Collision Unit. So they're wearing t-shirts in a press conference at one
That's what
time
they call
talking about their Caucasian Collision Unit. So yeah, I think they've got the
him. That's
exciting
awesome.
whites in Philadelphia and the Caucasian Collision Unit with Thieneman. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe Philly will need to bring him on then. I don't know if he's going to make it, but we shall see. All right, last guy we're going to talk about today until we get to our rankings and sleepers. It's going to be Emmanuel McNeill-Warren out of Toledo. A MAC guy makes it. 22-year-old senior coming out. He's 6'4", 201 pounds. So he's got some length to him. A 901 RAS score with a 4.52 40-yard dash. Great splits, good explosive scores. No agility testing there. Last year in 13 games, he had 77 tackles, 36 of those being solo with 5.5 TFLs, a half sack, 2 picks. One of those were for a touchdown, 5 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles. And then in 2024, in 8 games, he had 61 tackles, 35 of those were solo, 1.5 TFLs, half a sack, 1 pick, 5 pass breakups, and another forced fumble. Yeah, so statistically, I mean, great in terms of turnovers. He had 9 forced fumbles in college, but another guy similar to Caleb Banks, he's more traits driven. He's got that rare size and length for a safety. So, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. There's a lot of chatter of him kind of tickling that first round, but yeah, I like the upside with him, but still, the forced fumbles, that's big for me. I want to see a guy who can kind of force the ball out because that raises your ceiling a bit. If you're not getting the tackle numbers and you're still getting a turnover, that can give you some solid fantasy points on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that. Like, number one thing I mentioned was he's a playmaker, and I talked about the forced fumbles. You talked about the forced fumbles. I think that's a skill. So I don't think that's like a something you get in luck or by being just like a hard hitter. I think he's technically like very good at creating those plays, like punching it out. He's got the peanut punch down. And yeah, that's definitely something that'll help your fantasy points and obviously an NFL team as well. Compared to the other two guys, he plays bigger and he plays more physical. He's like an aggressive downhill, hard hitting safety. But he's got the ball skills as well. Like he's flashes these sort of incredible interceptions and pass breakups as well. And I think for his size, is like 6'3", maybe 6'4". He moves really well. And he's tall, so covering that middle of the field is going to be a bit easier. It's going to help him. And he only gave up 1 touchdown in coverage last year. Part of that's because of the competition, maybe not quite as high as Oregon or Ohio State, but um, he stayed at Toledo like all years he was in college, because he knew he could be a high pick because of Quinion Mitchell, who was previously there and became a first round pick. So, yeah, in terms of that's a negative of the competition, but he's also as with some of the aggressive players, you can be caught. So sometimes he'll whiff on a tackle. He had the missed tackle rate was quite a bit higher than Downs and Thieneman. And I think sometimes his technique was he's maybe just lunging at guys' knees rather than wrapping up and being
Yep.
disciplined. He can bite a bit hard on play fakes and overrun plays as well. But like you said, I think he's got a lot more traits, and I think they'll be highly coveted. And it's a good comparison to Caleb Banks, to be honest. Never connected the dots on that. I think we'll get to our rankings, but I really like the playmaking ability. I really like the way he plays. I think he's maybe going to be used a lot more in the box, maybe similar to Nick Emmanuel-Warren, just to piggyback on the last good rookie that came out. In a similar way, how he's always around the ball, always making plays, and that's something that I value for fantasy.
See, that's what I don't think is going to happen is putting him in the box just because of his frame. I think that there will be better guys that they can deploy in the box. I think the ideal landing spot for him is somewhere where they can just let him be center fielder and be that ball hawk. Because the thing about his game, I mean, he's all traits and he's a playmaker. So let him play center fielder and make plays. You know, whether he's driving on the ball, something coming across the middle, or if he's helping out a corner, if he can manipulate the quarterback's eyes and get him to throw a pass and make a play on the ball. Because there's a lot to clean up. You know, he's not very good in man coverage, especially against some of those quicker cornerbacks, those good route runners. So you don't really see him filling that nickel role. A little slower to diagnose pre-snap, post-snap. You can just see, especially in play action too, he's very slow to react to that. The tackling technique you mentioned, unlike Caleb Downs and Thieneman, they can break down and wrap up and make sure they get him down. You see a lot of ankle diving from him. Yeah, and like frame wise, I just don't really see him holding up in the box as well. I think he needs to go somewhere where he can play it with a little bit of depth and fill that center fielder role. I don't think he has as much versatility as guys like Downs and Thieneman, but still a very, very good player. I see why teams would covet a guy like that. I just think there's a lot of things that he needs to clean up at the next level.
Yeah, definitely. He's more potential than production right now,
Hmm.
and that's why teams are going to draft him. And he's going to be a first round pick, I believe, as well. But when you're a first round pick, you get on the field, you get 100% of the snaps. And for fantasy, that's mainly what I'm looking at. I'm not looking too much into the weeds on, and outside of a few guys on in terms of usage. I'm looking for guys who are going to play 100% of the snaps, are good players, and can make plays. And that's what I see in McNeill-Warren. I really like his potential, his ceiling, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's fair. No, I like it too. Especially, I mean, the ball skills are crazy.
Yeah.
He could get you 30-point games. You know, it's just that floor. I don't know if he's going to be much of a
Yeah,
contributor in terms of tackles, which give you a little bit more consistency. So,
that's fair.
but that's going to do it for the five prospects this week. But we can finish off here with our rankings and then we can dive in on our sleepers. Ross, why don't you kick it off? How did you rank these five guys?
So are we ranking them both together or by position? It's interesting.
I I did it all together, but
Right, like,
I
that's
think
fine.
I
That's
think
fine.
it's pretty sure. Yeah, I mean it'll shake out no matter what, whatever
Okay,
you got though.
I'll rank I'll rank Caleb Downs number one. I just think he's the lock to be the best player there, and have a long career. Um, I'll go I'll go Caleb Banks number two because I do value defensive tackle um more than safety in general. And yeah, he's got that elite ceiling with pass rushing ability, could win game weeks for you. Number three, I'll go McNeill-Warren, probably surprising you as
Hmm.
well. Again, he's a playmaker. That's what I'm looking for in my safeties. Like I said, I like this. I like the ceiling. I like the upside. I like the guys who can get me big points. Maybe not going to be as good a player as Thieneman at the next level. Definitely not in year one, but I really like that ceiling. Then I'll go Thieneman and then McDonald, a
Okay.
distant fifth.
Yeah. We agree on one and five. That's it. Everything else is in a different order. I've got Caleb Downs number one, no brainer there for me. I mean, he'll see 100% of the snaps as a rookie. He can mix it up in the run game. He's a ball hawk too. Like he's an every down kind of guy. I think he could end up being a top five safety in the league sooner rather than later. Then I've got Dillon Thieneman at number two. I like his fit against the run. I think he's versatile enough to move around, especially in year one with Harrison Smith still there. I can see him, even in sub packages, finding his way onto the field. Good playing time right off the bat. Then I've got Caleb Banks. He might have been a bit higher for me if it wasn't for the injuries. I just think when you got a guy with that type of size and that pass rush potential, that's a guy that's definitely worth drafting for sure in the middle rounds of our roster wars draft. At number four, I've got Emmanuel McNeill-Warren. We just talked about him, and I see him more as a free safety, kind of playing with depth, and he might be a little bit more turnover dependent. And then Kayden McDonald, I just kind of see him as a guy that makes things easier on for other teammates to go and make a play. I think he's just going to eat up space. He's not going to produce statistically, and he'll be a better NFL player than a fantasy contributor.
If I thought about it a bit more, it'd maybe be different, but sometimes that's good. You want the instincts, the gut instinct is that's my rankings there. Banks number two. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't blame you at all, honestly. Like, I came in thinking he was going to be last on my list, and yeah, he's number three, and yeah, we shall see. I mean, draft capital is going to mean a lot with him too. It
Yeah.
depends how teams are going to use him. So yeah, I could absolutely see him passing Tiedemann to be number two, but I'm pretty sure Caleb Downs is going to be the best in the class right off the bat and long term.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's move on to our sleepers. I just did the one, regardless of position. I don't know if you did one of each, but why don't you go ahead and kick it off, Ross?
Yeah, I did one. I did a defensive back. I'm actually going to talk about a cornerback, so not talk to any cornerbacks.
Nice.
And as is tradition, I think every year I pick like a nickel cornerback. I don't really like cornerbacks for fantasy in general. I just pick whatever's off the waiver wire. I won't even spend one warbuck on the guys, but just because of volatility every season. You talked about it a bit earlier. But I'm choosing to talk about Keontae Scott out of Miami. Now he's going to be a slot cornerback, a nickel cornerback, and his best plays are against the run around the line of scrimmage as a blitzer. He just plays with so much violence and aggressiveness. The way he takes on blockers and blows up running backs and receivers, he's just so fun to watch. Um, and he's racking up the tackles. He's making plays behind the line of scrimmage. Looking at his 2025 stats, he had 64 tackles, 42 of them solos, 13 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. So that's just an incredible production from a cornerback. And the best and sort of most consistent fantasy cornerbacks are always these nickelbackers. You think about Kenny Moore, Teron Johnson, Cooper DeJean recently. They're the consistent ones. You might get guys every year who have a good season and shoot to number one, but the guys who are in the top 10 every year tend to be your nickel cornerbacks. And that's exactly where Scott plays. And he's got the right skill set and he's got the right mentality as well to do very, very well, I think. He
Mhm.
also ran like 4.33 at his pro day as well. So he's definitely going to be maybe a top 2 round pick. I don't think he'll go one. So I'd say a second round pick. He'll get on the field and play a lot and just be around the ball, blowing up plays. Really fun to watch. And I think he's going to play in a productive spot for fantasy.
Yeah. No, I like the player too. I know that there's a lot of mock drafts with the Lions taking him to fill that nickel role
All right.
because, he's more than just a coverage guy. You
Yeah.
want to use him at the line of scrimmage in blitz packages. He can mix it up in the run game too. I think that he'll actually be like probably a round three pick, if that, just because he is solely nickel. He doesn't have that versatility to play outside really, which, for us doesn't really matter. It's just you want that guy that can raise the floor. And I think that he has a very high floor. So that's a solid sleeper. He's on my radar.
Yeah, he might go in the
But,
third. You're right. It's a strong cornerback class in general for
mhm.
NFL drafts, so he might get pushed down a bit. But yeah,
and
really fun to watch.
and you've got like a Jermod, what is it, Jermod McCoy? He's the one with the crazy injury. Like he
Yeah,
would be
but
the
then
number.
he
Yeah,
ran like a 4.3 or something at his
he
pro day.
did.
So it's like he had injury, like crazy ACLs and stuff like that. But then he ran a 4.3, so it's just a weird situation.
I did not know that he actually ran the 40. But yeah, I mean, that's a guy that you could argue is the number one corner in the class. And it's just he had his torn ACL. It's been like a year and a half recovery or something
Yeah.
like that. And he skipped the combine, he skipped the pro day, and then he just did a private workout then. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was some sort of pro day or private workout or something like that. But he ran like a 4.3, which is just like how is that even possible after missing so
Mhm.
much time?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of good cornerback options there. But I do like your idea of taking a nickel, somebody who can mix it up in the run game. I also went with defensive back, but I stuck with safety just because I think that they bring a little bit more value than the corners do. I'm going to talk about Bud Clark out of TCU. He's
Nice.
24 years old, senior coming out. Michigan fans, University of Michigan fans might recall him from his pick six in the college football playoffs a few years ago. Another Senior Bowl standout. You know, I love my Senior Bowl guys. He had multiple interceptions in practices, maybe in the game as well. He's 6'1", 188 pounds, so a little on the smaller side. But he has an 8.89 RAS score. He ran a 4.41 40-yard dash with good splits and elite explosive scores on the vert and the broad jump. Last year, 56 tackles, 31 of those were solo. 1.5 TFLs, a sack, 4 picks with one for a touchdown, and 7 pass breakups. 2024, not too shabby either. 67 tackles, 3 picks, 3 pass breakups, a forced fumble. This guy's a 3-time captain. He's an absolute ball hawk, and he has that versatility to kind of line up in the box, deep, nickel. You know, you can move him around all over the place, which will help him get playing time right off the bat. Really quick to diagnose and react, regardless if it's a run or pass. Willing as a run defender, even though he's a smaller guy, he's not scared to get in the mix. He kind of reminds me a lot of Quandre Diggs, just a lot taller. That's why I really, really like him. Teammates have nothing but good things to say about him. Just a really good head on his shoulders. The only knock on him is a smaller frame, if that can hold up at the NFL level. But this is just a guy that knows how to play football, and you kind of just have to throw some of these measurables out. Like, if you've got a really good football player who might run a 4.6 40, it doesn't really matter. Like I think that like Brian Branch, he was in that bucket, and he just knows how to get it done. He knows how to produce. I see kind of the same thing in Bud Clark. He can be a little bit over aggressive at time, taking some of those bad angles, like how I had mentioned with Emmanuel McNeill-Warren, and his missed tackle rate did increase between 2024 and 2025. Needs to work on his technique somewhat. The other biggest concern would be his injury history, missed time in 2021, 22, and 25. But even with that, just don't play him. When it comes to a fantasy football player, if he's starting, I think that he's going to get in the mix immediately as a rookie, at least in sub packages, until he finally settles into that role, maybe year 2 or 3. But he's a guy that you can stash, as a seventh round pick and just see what happens and just monitor. And then when he finally pops off, you can slot him right into a starting spot.
Yeah, I like him as well as a mid-round guy. Like he's a playmaker. You talked about like the ball skills. Like he's got 15 interceptions and 21 passes defensed in his college career. It's just insane. He's old as hell as well because he's had those injuries. He's
Before.
used all his college eligibility as well. But yeah, I really like him as a player. And he's got that one thing that he does well. When you look at mid-round picks, you're looking for guys who have like a trump card who do one thing really, really well. And he's a ball hawk. He's got the ball skills.
Yeah, and he's got that run stopping floor too, So he's got the upside, he's got the higher floor. Yeah, he's a really, really interesting prospect. And I think that, with the age, that's going to scare a lot of NFL teams away. Maybe, a third round pick kind of guy, but you will know the name eventually. You will see him be making some plays at some point in his career. I'm pretty confident on that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. We've got 1 week left. Next week, we save the best for last, the grand finale, running backs. Everybody's favorite. You're not going to want to miss that one, guys. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of RFA.
Thank you. See you later.